Okay, good morning. Welcome to Budget 2024 and looking forward to the next 2 or 3 days. So I will turn it over to CEO Becker.
Please. I get the easy job. How's everybody doing today, Council? It's my privilege to introduce the 2024 budgets, the operational capital budgets. As the Director of Corporate Services, will talk into more balanced budget in the form of financial components. I'd like to reference that the budget is balanced in the form of moving the community forward, considering the future needs of the organization, community, and maintaining service levels. The 2024 budgets demonstrating reinvestment in infrastructure and maintaining high-quality service levels. Administration is proposing very little service level adjustments within the current resource allocations. Besides that, in economic development, the operational budget increases are reflected to COLA to maintain the 50% percentile compared to market. One new staff member, increases to the RCMP contract, power and insurance, debt payment, and reserves development. The 2024 budget demonstrates a sense of pride in the diligence and resource awareness of the senior leadership team, management, and staff by basically holding the line on their respective budgets. Other budget wins include increased reserve allocation, infrastructure awareness through assessments and life cycling, and strengthening the town's overall asset management plan. The town has developed an in-depth fleet management plan that is inclusive of all departments using fleet condition criteria. I've reflected on some of the good work that SLT on their respective teams have produced. However, there are a few areas that create concern. There has been significant depletion of the utilities stabilization reserve, which has been utilized to fund projects over the last few years. This source of project funding is coming towards the end, and a reserves program has not been developed to replace it. This funding source will soon be depleted. The debt on the industrial park development will now be realized. It is intended that land sales will cover the debt payments. As the project comes to completion, the marketing plan will be ramped up. There is risk that there will be requirement of either reserves or taxes or both to pay for those debt payments if lot sales are slower than anticipated. Until the lots are sold, it is important for council to factor in a draw on taxes and reserves at some point in the next 2 to 3 years. To increase the allocation to reserves in 2024 and 2025 could help offset this risk. Administration has proposed increases in allocation to specific reserves, which you'll learn here. This complements Council's directive to allocate 2% tax increase to the future aquatic center to fund the project debt, which again you'll realize here shortly. As the discussions move into the capital budget, Council will receive project details of what is funded and what projects remain unfunded. So with that, Council, I'd like to put it over to the Director of Corporate Services to introduce more details to the budget.
Thank you. Okay. So first things, I'd just like to say that we'll likely go through the PowerPoint first and just go through that, and then we'll maybe take a break and then come back and go through the PowerPoint again along with the individual department in the binder, just so that we kind of know what's going on. Okay. So the 2024 operational budget, I do want to start out by just going over our vision and mission. So the vision for the town of Innisfil is pride in our community's diversity, beauty, and economic prosperity. Our mission is creating an inclusive, entrepreneurial, sustainable, and safe community with a connection to the region and each other. So the values that we have, now our values were just recently updated, belonging. So it now says we are an inclusive, respectful, and welcoming community where everyone feels a sense of home and family. We know that we are better together. Integrity, we do not compromise our principles. We make decisions based on sound data. Progress, we seek to adapt to a changing community and the global environment. We are positioning the town for future success through innovation. Our spirit, we are strong, inclusive, and resilient. We embrace the rich diversity of our community. And sustainability, we deliver excellent services to our residents while keeping a clear focus on environmental, economic, and social impacts. So when council first was elected back in 2022, you guys did do some strategic planning, and from that, these 4 pillars were developed. So a connected community that fosters a sense of belonging, a robust and adaptable economy, respect for our environment, and provide strong leadership. Now, just recently, council did go through and do kind of that mid-year cycle refresh or touch base, and from that, council strategic priorities were kind of clarified and updated, and in that 5 kind of key points were identified. So ensuring housing diversity, meeting recreational needs, adding an economic development officer to the town staff, sustainable asset management, and growing the energy hub. And when we were developing this budget, we did look to those 5 key strategic priorities as the basis of some of our decision making. As well as we also want to provide high-quality municipal services valued by the residents. We always want to maintain competitive property taxes and to protect the organizational health. So a little bit of our town organizational structure. So the Office of the CAO provides governance support, operation administration, systems development, plan execution. Then we have corporate services. That department covers finance, legislative services, HR, IT, and procurement. Operational services covers utilities, public works, parks, health and safety. Community services, planning and development, recreation, FCSS, sustainability, economic development, communications and marketing. And then fire and protective services, they do fire enforcement as well as emergency management. When we look at going through our budget, we do have very limited ways that we can generate revenue. So our funding tools are quite limited, the main one being taxes. Then we have franchise fees, user fees, sale of goods and services, grant funding, and then off-site levies and developer contributions. So the 2024 budget is being presented to you with a balanced budget, and we did do that based on our new budget policy that was passed previously that did indicate that all budgets going forward would be balanced and would have no contingency. The budget currently includes a 3.5% COLA as well as merit increases for staffing. The 2024 budget, includes a user utility increase of approximately $5.50 per monthly billing based on an average of 10 cubic meters of water. We do identify the MSI grants, which is just over $65,000. That is allocated to the Pace Bus operations as well as the Historical Society contribution. And we do still identify carbon tax. It is one of the only taxes that we do pay as a municipality, and it is sitting at $105,000 for 2024. And those are only the direct costs that we actually can recognize. So I chose to add a few of these slides in again. So in 2021, we did do a study with the residents to see kind of where they were at. And this is one that, in your view as a resident of the town of Innisfil, what is the most important issues facing your community? That is one issue you feel should receive the greatest attention from your local leaders. And so the big one was the economy at 19%, and then followed by crime, safety, and policing, and then roads and infrastructure. Again, in that same study, we did ask residents where they want to see that investment. Again, this is from 2021, but we still felt that there was value in providing that to you. So economic development was number 1 at 56%, where they wanted more investment. Police services from the RCMP at 55%, and then so on and so forth. So our current staffing levels, we do currently have 65 full-time staff, 22 part-time staff, 26 part-time firefighters, and there is 1 new position being identified in the budget. Summer staff in budget, we do have 16 identified, so 1 being allocated to protective services, 4 being allocated to roads, parks receives 8, water and wastewater share 1, cemetery, and then an additional 1 for the skate park attendant. Salaries and benefits are typically the highest cost for any municipality. 50% is actually the average. Salary budgeting is very complex. We have to look at anniversary dates, grid movement, performance management, source deductions, and staff turnover. And we actually have 2 longtime staff members that are scheduled to retire in 2024 that we also have to manage that as well. When looking at increasing salaries, COLA is actually inflation and merit is that other. So merit is what is identified to reward staff and give them that increase, but COLA is not to be looked at as an increase to staff. It is meant to just bring their salaries up to what the market should be for them. We do compare COLA rates with neighboring municipalities, and we will talk about that later in the day. One big thing we do look at is CPI, and it is currently sitting at 3.7, so that is September 22 to September 2023. However, I did want to identify a few other ones. So food is at 5.5, shelter is 9.7, and energy is 12.6. And these kind of are the things that our staff have to buy regularly, and you can see that those are quite a bit higher than the overall CPI. So property tax fundamentals. So property taxes are a means to which municipalities generate revenue to fund our services, infrastructure, and reserves. Property taxes are the single largest revenue source for municipalities. So the rule of thumb is kind of, you want it to be an average of 60% of municipal revenues. Innisfil is currently sitting at 45% this year. Property taxes are based on a fee-for-service model. So property taxes pay for services that have a clear public benefit. And property taxes compensate for services where cost recovery is partial. For example, fire, recreation, transit, culture, family and community services. If we were to expect the users of those services to pay 100% for it, it likely would be too expensive for them to maintain that. Okay, so we'll get into the general government. So the property tax revenue that we are looking at receiving is $9,470,805. And that does include a 4.11% tax increase. We'll get into the breakdown a little bit more, but 2% of that is earmarked specifically for debt, building the debt in our budget to help pay for a future aquatic center, and 2.11% is for our own internal increases. We are identifying the 2024 special tax bylaw revenue of $10,275. That is for the 61st Avenue and 37th Street. Those bylaws will come to you along with the tax bylaw in April next year. ATCO Gas franchise fee revenue actually went down to $681,559. We're seeing quite a decrease in that, and what that is that the delivery tariff for ATCO Gas went down significantly as an estimate for this next year. So we are seeing a loss of about $100,000 on that ATCO Gas franchise fee revenue. However, Fortis franchise fee, we are sitting at 17%. We are looking to see an increase of $1,757,493. At this time, we are not asking for an increase to that franchise fee revenue. However, we did want to identify the revenue that we could generate if we wanted to increase it to 18, 19, or 20%, and that is identified in the PowerPoint there. This department sees a transfer to reserve of $399,691, and that is earmarked to go to the facility reserve to build up that debt payment for that future aquatic center debt payment. If we didn't want to increase any more taxes, each percent increase would give us $94,708 in revenue. And we are seeing an overall assessment increase of residential of 4.73% and non-residential as 0.769%. So we are looking to build debt capacity into the budget for future years. So I do have the next 5 years kind of identified on this slide. So in 2024, as I did indicate, we are looking at a 4.11% tax increase. 2.11 is the town increase and 2% is the debt increase. And if we go on to 2025, we are looking at a 4.56% increase with a 2.56 for the town increase and a 2% debt increase. In 2026, we can see that the town increase is 1.71 with the debt increase of 2% for a total increase of 3.71. And then in 2027, a town increase of 2.15. However, we only need a debt increase of 1.36 to get us to that $910,000 for a total increase of 3.51. And then in 2028, we can see that that debt increase has fallen off at 0%, and the town increase is 1.53 at this point. And the transfer to reserves over the next 4 years slowly builds up until we hit that $910,000, sorry. and that will sit on the budget to help pay for, or will cover the debt payment of that future aquatic center. I did want to show the historic mill rates. So you can see in 26, 27, and 28, there was no change. Then there was an increase. And then 19, 20, 21, there was no change. And then 22 and 23, there was increases. So the projected tax increases across the province, we do want to identify what other municipalities are doing for tax increases. I won't go over them in detail, but you can see them there, that there is some significant tax increases. City of Lacombe, I believe, has already passed. Most of these are still just projected, so they could change by the time they get passed in the future. So we do like to show this slide going forward. It just kind of shows you what the municipal mill rate is on an average property of $300,000. With our proposed mill rate is $2,189.61, and that equates out to $182 a month. And nowadays, what does that get you? For municipal services, you can see that it gets you the snow removal, fire and emergency, playground development, ball diamonds, weed control, road maintenance. It covers your library, community events, policing, animal control, path and trails, arena, aquatic center, and transit. Versus monthly cable or internet, a fancy dinner for two, a heating or power bill, monthly insurance, or a family movie night. We do identify the carbon tax in our budget. So the carbon tax is going to go up to $4.20 per gigajoule on April 1st of 2024. And we do identify $105,000 in our budget for that. And you can see that it does go up every year for the next 5 years. So we'll move on to council's budget. So some of the big things we like to talk about are the advertising and promotions. So the Canada Day fireworks, the community anniversary and birthday celebrations that covers, the sponsorships, any sponsorship. So if someone makes a request for a whole sponsor for a ball diamond, that will come out of here. The parade costs come out of this budget as well. The doctor's welcome baskets have been included in here, as well as the scholarships are included as well. Registration fees, so we will talk about this in some detail when we go through. So the AB Munis is always covered under here, as well as FCM. We do identify some municipal leaders caucus sessions throughout the year, as well as council's professional development is also covered under this department. So the general admin budget is next. So one big change we did here is under computer maintenance. We actually moved all of the computer programs from the other departments to this budget. So things like Hippo, which is our facility maintenance software, ActiveNet, MuniSite, Altilis, and Fleet Pro, we all moved into this budget. So it does look like it's increased, but you'll see in other departments we've actually lowered those costs. Under contracted services, that is where our HR contract falls, as well as our after-hours answering service, as well as our paper shredding services as well. General insurance, we did see an increase of $20,000 this year in the budget. It did go up from $210,000 to $230,000. Equipment under 5K has gone up to $32,000 this year. We do have 6 laptops and 6 desktop computers that are scheduled to be renewed and replaced in 2024. Legal services, you'll see it did go down in this department, but it did increase in other department, in the bylaw department. So we did see a net increase of 0. We just kind of reallocated it. Assessor services, if you would remember, it was, we did re-sign our assessor contract just a couple weeks ago, and they have maintained that price for the next 5 years. So we are not seeing an increase on our assessor services from now until 2028. Our audit fees, we did see a slight increase from BDO this year as well. So police services, the big thing that is covered under here, outside of we do have 3 staff members that work out of the RCMP detachment, is our RCMP contract. So we are seeing an increase of $252,000 for this year. And one thing we did add this year is we actually put down a sheet for our RCMP contract history. So you can just see, so from 2017, we were at 1.26, and in 2028, we're going to be estimated at just over $2 million.
Eric, is that the increase just for this year, or is that including the retro pay that we're supposed to pay, I think, by next year, the year after?
Yes, so Mayor Barkley, that is just the increase for this year. That increase is not included in that. That's something separate.
Is that next year that we're supposed to pay that?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
we are supposed to be paying it by next year.
Okay, thank you.
And I will just say that the current contract that they have is now expired again, and they are renegotiating a new contract again. We could be in a position in 3 years where we have another back pay situation that we do have to pay. So fire services, so we do see Red Deer County does contribute into the revenue for fire services at $120,000. We did add this year a fire services master plan of $35,000 in the budget. Radio replacements, we do see that at $20,000. So we do have 33 portable radios. These are the radios that each of our firemen carry day to day, and that is what identifies if they need to go attend a call. They are $3,500 each, and we do need to start changing out 3 per year just to maintain, make sure that they're all staying in times. And we do have 4 base stations, and those are $6,000 as well, that those do need to start to be replaced as well. Telecommunications is covered under this budget, so the dispatch services from 911 is covered under here, as well as radios and the landlines and internet at the fire hall. Firefighting supplies, we are seeing an increase to $55,000 up from $45,000, and that is because we do have a requirement to change out our bunker gear. It is on a 10-year cycle based on NFPA standards. So bunker gear, those are the outfits that they wear. To replace that, that's $3,200. Helmets they need to replace at $600 each. Boots are $700 each, and gloves are $200. And each of those do need to be on a 10-year replacement cycle. We did add in some call types, so you can see the calls from 2022 to 2023. When we are not at the end of the year yet, we still have about, by the time this was done, we still have 2 months of data that needs to be input in that. And you can see that we're pretty close on par with what we were hitting last year with 2 months left. And then we have the number of call volumes by month as well. So emergency management, the only big change that we're seeing out of this department is we do have the addition of an operating project. You can see it actually every 2 years for $10,000. And what this is an emergency coordination center exercise. We are required to have one every 2 years. However, this can look a little bit different. We can do an exercise internally. We can become a partner of a regional exercise. And we don't know what that looks like yet, but we did want to identify that as something going forward. So the next sheet is our helipad. So the helipad has now been operational for over a year. We've had 5 landings to date so far in 2023. The costs have not changed at all, but they do include daily inspection of the helipad, any staff training that is needed, miscellaneous maintenance, as well as snow removal from the helipad as well. Okay, so bylaw enforcement. So we do have 1 summer student in bylaw. This will be the 3rd year that we've had a summer student. The transfer to reserve is sitting at $20,000. That does go into the fleet reserve to help cover off of future bylaw vehicles. And this year we actually completed in the middle of completing the safety and well-being plan, and we did want to identify some implementation dollars in the budget for next year based on the outcome of this plan. So we do want to identify the complaint type and volume year to date. So you can just go through and see all the different types of calls that the peace officers do receive. One thing we do want to identify is the tickets written for bylaw and what we would like to receive in revenue. For example, in this year, they've written 61 municipal tickets, so those are bylaw tickets, and 283 provincial tickets. And the total ticket revenue that they have written to date is $96,000. However, that is different from what we receive. So when someone writes a ticket, if they choose not to pay it, it actually gets rewritten onto a provincial ticket. and then they actually go to court. And whether they get convicted or not is up to the court system. But even if they get convicted, whether it's an absence or not, we are still waiting for them to pay, right? And that could take up to 5 years, depending on what they do, right? We normally have to wait for them to change their license or things like that. So while they've written 96,000 tickets to date, we've actually only received $18,000 in revenue for this year. So it is really a big disparity. That's not to say that they're not doing their jobs. There's just different ways for those people to pay going forward. Now, this year even, you can actually spend time in jail for the weekend, and that can wipe out some of those costs. So that is something that we need to look at going forward. Just even though they are writing those tickets and getting that revenue, us receiving the revenue is a big different story.
Mayor Barkley, may I have a question? Yeah. Over to Director Vickers. Is there a trend that helps us measure how much we typically get per year, knowing that most of it, or some of it, or a percentage of it might not be realized for 5 years?
Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Mazeros. We haven't looked at necessarily the trends going from year to year. However, outside of the trend that it is going down. So we are starting to see less and less. And I think there is opportunities for those ratepayers to have alternate ways, right? Like spend a weekend in jail so they don't have to pay and things like that.
And just to add, I do get the docket report. There's more people not paying, so it goes into court and then provincial ticket applied, and we only get 60% of the fine revenue. 40% goes back to the system. So yeah, we're getting hit in so many different ways. Likely as we, the crew has moved from more education to really putting effort into the ticketing component. So I think it'll start to balance out in time over the next few years. You'll see increase in revenue if they maintain that level of ticketing due to that 5-year window of starting to get that revenue source coming in.
Maybe just something for the back pocket going forward is maybe a resolution at Alberta Munis over something like this, because it's obviously, I'm assuming it's provincial legislation that's mandating this process, and
It's probably partially Mayor Barkley, but also the ability for people to pay. It really starts with those that are fined to pay their fine. That's really the real issue.
but do they choose not to pay because there's really no consequences until maybe they go to renew a license, or
Yeah, perhaps.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have one more question. I don't want to get hung up on this, but I don't want to come back to it for my question. So the revenue that's shown here, does that include the stuff that's flowing in from years back as well?
Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Bates. Yes, so when we do look at that revenue, we look at the total outstanding tickets that we do have over the past
That's
5,
our
6
revenue.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to health and safety. So the big things in this is the staff development and training. So this is the staff training for all of our staff for health and safety. So we do pay for hearing tests for all of our staff. They do have to, I believe it's on a biannual, every 2 years you have to have your hearing tested. Confined space, fall protection, WMIS, first aid, basic life support, ground disturbance, as well as ground disturbance for the supervisor, cargo securement, safety officer training, and flagger training. We do have to train our summer staff every year with multiple different training courses, as well as our current staff have to be on a rotation. The telecommunications, so is 6,400 of that is our work alone program. So this is our safety program to make sure that if our staff is working alone, there is a mechanism for them to be safe and be protected. And we do have to identify an external core audit for 2024. This is something that has to happen every 3 years. We're just completed our second internal audit for this year, and next year it is supposed to be an external audit for our core, and that is a $6,000 cost. So Public Works, because police and fire need heroes too. And then I was actually sent this photo last week about a cat in a tree that they were that they were doing, so I thought it would be a good picture. Infrastructure in Innisfil, this is a slide that we used last year. There is a few more roads in the Southwest Industrial. However, they're not officially completed yet, so those numbers aren't updated. But we do have 90 kilometers of roads and lanes that we do manage throughout the year. Just over 64 kilometers of water lines, 64 kilometers of wastewater lines, 36.5 kilometers of storm lines, 20 kilometers of trails, 58 kilometers of sidewalks, and 203 acres of park and green space that operations has to manage and maintain. So the complaints that we see in operations, in 2021, we did see 344, which was a big jump. In 22, it did kind of go down to 273. However, so far to date in 2023, we have seen 270, so I do anticipate will be quite a bit more for this year. So in roads, we do have some operating projects at $115,000. So the infrastructure study at $15,000, as well as sidewalk repairs for $100,000. Contracted services did go up to $65,000 this year. So in that, center lines painting is $15,000. Sidewalk rink snow removal is $15,000. Snow removal contract is sitting at $20,000. Now that is only used if needed, right? So that's if we can't maintain the snow, there is some opportunities for us to engage with a contractor to help us. Dust control is at $10,000, Clean Harbors is at $5,000, and Main Street intersection and crosswalk is sitting at $20,000. For summer staff is paid for out of this department. And electricity, now it is not 100% the light poles, they do pay for the electricity at the shop, but the majority of the cost of that $480,000 is all the light poles around town for the electricity. And transfer to the fleet reserve.
Can I ask a question there? So is that the electricity that goes there plus the maintenance of the poles? What does that include?
So Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Bates, so that cost is strictly just for the electricity for the light poles. Any maintenance cost for the light poles would be somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
As well as a transfer to the fleet reserve at $290,000. So move on to parks. So we do have 2 operating projects under parks. So tree replacement throughout town is $25,000 and tree removal at $11,000. So 8 summer or seasonal staff is covered under the Parks Department. They pay for the porta potty rentals at around the park facilities, that's $12,000. Transfer to reserve is at $350,000. $50,000 of that goes to the fleet reserve to help cover any parks equipment that they have, and $300,000 goes to just the infrastructure life cycle reserve. Purchase of equipment is sitting just over $5,000, and those are things like the small tools, trimmers, saws, things like that they may need. So public transportation, so this is kind of the first year now that we've had the new Pace Bus program. So the Pace Bus contribution is going to be sitting at $155,000. So the annual contract is sitting at $130,000, and chartered services are sitting at $25,000. And so those chartered services are when someone has booked it to go to Red Deer. They want to go to the hospital, or they're going to some doctor's appointment in Red Deer, and that's what that chartered service is. We still do receive $42,000 from the MSI operating to help fund the Pace Bus. The transfer to reserve, to the fleet reserve, is sitting at $10,000, and we did add the fuel cost of $20,000 this year. So public transportation, so the Pace Bus does operate 43 hours a week. It averages 64 rides per week over the last 4 weeks. So the new group booking is starting to be utilized, 1 to 2 per week. So we do have the top origins of Sunset Matter, Autumn Grove, 46th Ave, Ritson Bennett Park, and Dodds Lake Manor. And their top destinations are the medical clinic, a hospital, No Frills, and PharmaSave. So the chartered service, we do average on 6 trips per month, and there is increasing use of app and digital payment. So the storm sewer or repair is next. So in that is the repairs and maintenance of all storm sewer issues. So any digs, repairs, flushing, any cammering of the lines. And we do a transfer to reserve at $60,410. Now, this is increased this year because we do have a cycle of a catch basin repair, which goes every 2 years. This is a year that we do not have that program on, so we do see that increased transfer to reserve.
Can I ask another quick question?
Yes.
That transfer to reserve, how does that compare to the income we would get from the storm sewer line that's right on our utilities?
Yeah, so the revenue that we get is estimated to be at just over 131,000. Okay, so we'll move into water. So our consumption is looking at a requirement of $2,288,858. So we do base that on a 5-year average. We don't want to include a really expensive year or a low year. We want to make sure that it is that 5-year average. We are looking at a 15-cent increase for utility rates for water. The Mountaineer Regional Water Commission is sitting at $1,813,908. Again, that's based on the 5-year average. And we were given an 8-cent increase for 2024 by the commission. So operating projects, there is 2 in this budget. So the Reservoir 1 renovation is sitting at $50,000, and we have a valve repair replacement also sitting at $50,000. Contracted services is sitting at $33,600, so this does cover half of them, or half of the cost for the SCADA first calls and any instrument tests. They do have 1 summer student, and that is shared with wastewater. And we do have a transfer to reserves in this department as well. $25,000 goes to the utility fleet capital reserve, and actually $149,000 is going to the utility capital reserve as well. So here's our water rate forecast. So you can see that in 2024 we did do a 15-cent increase, going up to 3.01 per cubic meter. And we did extrapolate a 10-cent increase going forward for the next 4 years. That is all subject to increases that we receive from the commission going forward, but based on that. And I did do a transfer to reserve projection up until 2028. So wastewater, the consumption is going up to 2.565 million. That is based on a 5-year average. That does include a 20-cent increase this year. We are actually also looking to increase the flat rate up to $12, so up $2 from 10 to 12. We were given a 5-cent increase from the commission. It goes up to 2.318 million based on the 5-year average. So we are looking at an operating project of $30,000, and that is for manhole repair and replacement. The engineering services for $40,000 are covered under this department. Again, they share summer student shared with water, and they also cover a lot of those same contracted services that is shared with water, the SCADA first call instrument tests, as well as coveralls. We are transferring to the utility fleet capital reserve in the amount of $73,000. However, we are having to pull from the utility capital reserve in the amount of $22,095. So if you look at the water, wastewater rate forecast, we are looking at 20-cent increases from 2024 to 2028. We are still having to pull from the wastewater reserve in $22,000 in 2024. However, in 25, we are able to put $10,000 away, and it goes to 47, then 86, and then 127. And that is part and partial with that increase of the $2 to help cover some of this transfer to reserve. One thing we did want to talk about is the 2020 plan. So back in 2015, when we actually joined the commission, we were supposed to be joining a 2020 plan. And that was supposed to be a 20-cent increase plus whatever the commission gave us every year from 2015 to 2020. We were supposed to be ending at $3.45 in 2020 with a projected of 20-cent increases after that. The actuals, we didn't actually quite meet that. So in 2020, when we should have been at 345, we were still only sitting at 320. We didn't get to 345 until 2021. Had we gone up to where we should have been, we might be in a little bit better position for the reserve. So we do want to kind of make sure we still get up into those points, which is not far, but we do want to make sure that we're continuing to go up to build those reserve amounts. I did do a utility reserve forecast, so you can see that we have transferred to reserve from water, wastewater, and storm, as well as the estimated capital projects for the next 5 years that are part of our 10-year capital plan. And you can see that by 2028, we will actually deplete the utility wastewater reserve or water reserve, utility reserve, and be in the negative in the amount of $374,000. So that does mean that we need to look at the reserves and increase those rates next year and the year after to help build up some of those reserves so that we still maintain balances in that reserve.
I'd like to see Director Vickers at some point, not today necessarily, but I'd like to see to change that 2028 figure to 0 or something black, what the rate would actually need to be. If you could do that. Thanks.
Okay, so the next one is solid waste. So we do have a transfer to reserve in the amount of $29,098. It is earmarked to go to the general cap reserve to pay back the purchase of the garbage bins. It is supposed to be a 34 annual repayment. We're not quite hitting that this year. As well as the E360 contract will be up next year, so what that looks like will likely be having to go out to tender, and it could change the way things look. So these are the proposed rates for 2024. So water we are proposing an increase of 15 cents to $3.01. The water flat rate is being maintained at $10. Sewer rate is going up to $4. That's an increase of 20 cents per cubic meter. The sewer flat rate, we are looking at an increase of $2 up to $12. And then the garbage and recycling are maintained at $20 and $5, as well as the storm costs at $3 and $6 are staying the same. So we did want to bring in a utility bill comparison like we do every year. Now, the rates that we have here for us are our new proposed rates, and the rates here for everyone else are the current rates today that we were able to find that are approved right now. So as you can see that even with our proposed rates, we are still sitting on the lower end in our area. So the only people that are lower than us are Bowden and Penhold, and with Sylvan Lake, Black Falls, Olds, and Lacombe are still being maintained ahead of us. And like I said, these are not their proposed rates for next year. Likely they could also be increasing their rates for next year as well. So under FCSS, we are seeing some grant revenue being increased. They did update the contract, and we are seeing an increase up to $216,934. With that, we are just increasing the grants to others from 120 to 129 to kind of offset that increase. Internal programs as well is in there at $33,600. Cemetery, we do have a transfer to reserve in the amount of $7,500. However, this is equal to the perpetual care reserve. So if that's at $5,000, we'll transfer $5,000, but if that's at $10,000, we transfer $10,000. They also pay for one summer staff as well out of this department, and they do have a $25,000 new concrete runner operating project. So that means it's that the cement concrete underground that all the plots need to be put up against. So when we run out, we have to do new ones. So one is scheduled to be implemented this year. So municipal planning, so we do have a safety code levy of $2,500. This is an in and out on the budget. So we collect the revenue from development permits, and then we have to turn around and make that exact same payment to the province. So contracted services, so that's that MuniSite and the AltaList subscription. Those have been moved to the admin budget, as those are computer programs. Planning service, so $30,000 for the PCPS contract, and professional support. So grants to others, we do have the facade, which is at $10,000, and the infill at $60,000. And we do have 2 operating projects scheduled for this department this year: an air photo of $12,000 and downtown initiatives for $15,000.
May I ask a question, please? Through to Director Vickers, can you tell me how much we granted out this year in the infill grants?
Yes.
We've only had one project this year, access, so it's the 15,000 is a single unit project, so. We have seen definitely increased interest and do anticipate, a fair number of applications, for 2024.
Okay. So we'll move on to the land department. So we do have some land sales of $2,475,000 in this department. However, this is kind of linked to a capital project that we'll talk about tomorrow with the development of some houses in Napoleon Meadows. With that is a transfer to the capital budget of $1.5 million to help cover the cost of the building of those houses. And again, we'll go in detail of that project tomorrow when we go over the capital projects, as well as some contracted services for $25,000.
Director Vickers, and I guess maybe Director Jenkins, when we speak about that tomorrow, can you bring us the profit loss statement from the houses we built this year?
We don't fully have them, they're not, we just paid the last invoice to Abby on one house, so we don't have a finalized one, we can probably bring a rough.
I'd like to see a rough, because I think if we're going to do this, we need to know that there's a return. Thank you.
So one of the big things that CAO Becker did indicate is that we are realizing the Southwest Industrial loan payments this year. We have applied for the loan that we should be receiving shortly. We did want to identify the projected revenue that we are going to be receiving for the lot sales in the Southwest Industrial area. So the total projected revenue is $7,988,025. And we do have the loan information now, so that is a principal of $5.5 million to cover the cost of that, with interest of $1.767 million for total payments of $7,267,843, with a net revenue for the Southwest Industrial area of $720,182. That's if we take the full 10 years to pay back the loan. However, so if we can cut down on some of that interest by selling these lots as soon as possible, we only have a 3-month penalty for paying interest if we pay off the loan early, so that would be the best ideal. But it is kind of a risk on our budget if we don't sell this land. We do have to make those annual payments, and I believe it's I'm not sure of the exact number, but it's over $700,000 that we do have to pay each year now for the loan, so we need to make sure that if we don't sell those loans, it is going to become a liability on our budget going forward.
Yeah, I'm not quite, so I know we approved the basis of the loan on the basis of interest only. But then how does, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how the two work together, that we approved it on the basis of paying the interest only, but we were going to recover the principal on the sales of the lots. So you're putting the two together
Correct.
in this.
Yes.
Okay. And these are the specific lots, or what's, like, lot 2, 3, 6?
Yeah, so these are the lots that are eligible for sale.
Okay. And so again, I'm looking at it, so we're counting on selling a lot of the expensive lots first? No, I'm just trying to.
I think we're expecting to sell all of them
Yeah,
as
but,
soon as possible.
but I'm seeing in the first, yeah, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So these aren't on an annualized basis at all. These are just specifically the lots and the price.
Numbers and the associated costs.
I got it.
Yes.
So Director
Thank you.
Vickers, I'm sorry, Councillor Bates, we had, we talked a little about like, are we open, I guess, to leasing, and what does that look like? And, you know, I'm wondering if maybe sometime over the next couple of days, 3 days, that you could bring something in that respect too, if we kind of had an idea of what that lease price might be and how does that impact?
I think the director has a philosophy.
Okay,
Other director, we have a philosophy in regards to leasing. So immediate hit, the long term is beneficial.
no, for sure.
Short term would be still an impact.
Yeah,
We don't have specifics because we don't know what the lease rate would be.
okay, no, fair enough, okay.
Just one final question, please. Can you remind me then, as the revenue comes in on the sale of these lots, that money will be applied immediately to the principal amount of the loan, or are we holding on to it until we've got the entire amount, until it's all sold?
So likely the best idea would be as soon as we have it, if we're generating more than what the annual payment is, we should be applying that directly to the loan payment right away, because then we're reducing that interest cost going forward.
So we're just going to focus though on paying for the annual payment as opposed to buying down or paying down the principal amount of the loan?
So yeah, that'll be the priority first, is just making sure that payment is paid. And if we sell 5 of those lots this year, or in 2024, we'll make sure the loan payment gets paid, and the balance of that will get paid to the principal, so that the loan won't be at 5.5 million anymore, it might be at 2 million left or something, right? Okay, we'll move on to the campground. So we did actually see the revenue increase from 17,000 to 19,000 for 2024. We actually had a sit down with the Lions Club just a few weeks ago and discussed the increased costs, and they were very amenable to increasing their revenue for this year. So they do have 42 trailer sites, 27 sites with a 15 amp electricity and 15 sites with a 30 amp electricity, and they still have 5 sites that are strictly for tenting with no power. We do identify an $8,500 transfer to reserve as well. So economic development, we do have a new EDO staff position included in the budget. It is covered into this department. Any CAPE and EDA fees are in here, as well as contracted services. So this goes towards anything that new EDO person wants to do, all their initiatives. One thing we did kind of add in this department is we did develop a grants to others that is intended to support economic development in the amount of $15,000. So if any business comes and asks and needs help in that way, there is now kind of some funding in the budget to kind of offset those kind of requests.
Just to sort of clarify that, the chamber is probably the primary target of those funds, as opposed to some of the arrangements we've had with respect to the Market on Main, or those types of arrangements, as opposed to the town paying for the porta potties for the Market on Main. The chamber could develop a proposal, come to us, say we want to do X, Y, and Z, and we're asking for this money, and there's some that has been earmarked for such a purpose.
Okay, and Director Kennedy, the EDA fees, is that a membership?
Yes, that's the economic
Yeah.
development officer.
And then the contracted services?
So that would be Factor 5 or
Okay.
other professional support.
Okay, great.
Got a couple more questions over here, Mayor. So, just wanted to make sure, so this would cover all of the anticipated budget for the Economic Development Officer. So would that include something like what we did with the Todd Hirsch, that presentation, or?
Typically, at this point, something like that would fall in our special events budget line, is where we would pay for those types of
Okay.
activities. We could use contracted services, depending on where the work plan falls, whether we're utilizing, Factor 5, but we're utilizing them less, and we want to pay for something else, but it's not
So in-
directly reflected there.
I just want to make sure I understand something else too. So I know they don't always get it right, but the paper, when we did the Todd Hirsch event, referred to the company as sponsoring it, supported by the town. Who's the company? Or was that just the press identifying, I just don't want to get into a situation like I see going on in Olds where they have their Olds Institute and whatever else they do down there, and now they're financially struggling, and I don't want to go there. I want to make sure I totally understand the ED effort and that it's covered. It's just the town at this point that's
Yeah.
doing everything on its own budget.
That's correct, Councillor Bates. There's no proposal to make adjustments to the current framework to offer economic development support to the community. Only addition of an EDO. The Hirsch Reamer event was fully funded by the town.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
And just a question relative to the grants to others line. So would we be only then considering projects that would have lined up with Power of Place? Or are we looking at any random projects that other organizations want to bring forward?
Other projects could come forward. At this point, there's no policy developed around this grant, so it would be coming to council for approval of any proposal that, that was put forward. And, you know, the primary target would be the chamber or an organization like that looking to do things within the community.
So some of the work plan for that economic development department is the new EDO hiring and onboarding, continued collaboration with the chamber, local investment program completion, community and property inventory promotion, exploration of opportunity development co-op, Southwest industrial land sales, and the rural renewal program. So in the communications department, so contracted services, that does do the smartphone app as well as our website hosting. And this also covers all of our special events. So some of our special events are the parade. We do have registration night twice per year, Youth and Seniors Week, Hillside Vibes, the skate park community event, Christmas tree lighting, Canada Day, community awards, Family Day, and Winterfest. So that's just some that we take on. The town also does fully support a number of other events that happen out in the community as well. Community service programs, so they do have one summer student out of here that goes for the skate park. This also covers any of the contracted services specifically for our instructors, so like any of our yoga instructors, for example, is covered under this. All of our joint use revenue and expenses come out of this department, so anytime someone rents the gym or has some kind of thing at the school, that revenue comes into us. We take that revenue. There are expenses that the school can have, for example, a new score clock they can purchase out of these funds, and the net of that gets transferred to or from a joint use reserve, right? And that goes to pay for if they need new volleyballs or new basketballs or new netting for the gyms. That's what this kind of covers.
Sorry, can I just go back one question quickly? In the communications budget, we talk about parade being allocated under special events. We also include that the parade under council's budget, so I'm just wondering what the sum of the two parts are.
So the parade under council's budget is specifically the float and like the candy that the town specifically purchases. The cost that would come out of here is the project as a whole, right?
Okay.
Like the development of the whole
Got
project.
it, thanks.
Okay, so we'll move on to community services admin. So we do receive 23,000 and some change from the MSI operating, and that is earmarked to kind of offset the cost to the historical village. So there is some changes here though. So the grants to others, we are seeing an increase from $20,000 to $25,000. So the big portion of that $20,000 is that elemental energy grant. However, we did want to include $5,000 that would be in that same grant that are more internal services. For example, specifically pool passes. We don't want to take that grant and have most of it going to just our own internal services, so we're really just padding our own kind of pockets. So we did want to increase that to $25,000, to have $25,000 to go towards pool passes or pace bus passes or things like that are really just internal programs that we fund. As well as grants to others, in addition, went from 43,000 to 63,000. So in that is the historical village at 30,000. Community grants is sitting at 13,000, but we did identify public art as a grant in $20,000 to cover when people want to have murals and they're requesting grant funding or things like that. There is an earmarked amount specifically for public art.
So around that, Director Vickers, and Director Jenkins, we were in the process of developing a public art policy. And, you know, we talked about, is that going to be something internal? Is it going to be something external? Do we leave it to the community to have their public art committee and apply for grants and raise funds and sponsors and that kind of stuff? Or do we bring that into the town to do? And if we do, like, how is that being done? So somebody comes forward, they want to have a public art project, or the town wants something done. Do we put that out to tender? Or just wondering if that's all been thought out.
So no, we came to council last fall with a public art policy and there hasn't been progress made on that to date. I guess the intent of this is sort of in an interim, or at this point, a large portion of that community grant, $13,000 in the last couple of years, has gone towards public art mural projects. It seems to be a positive in the community and seems to be utilizing these funds in a positive way. So if we're able to continue to fund that, those activities, so that they're being taken care of within the community, at this point, no, we don't have budget or resource capacity to be looking at public art policies from the town-initiated standpoint.
No, fair enough. And I'm also curious, like with Historical Village, I don't know how much we get involved with them and, you know, around setting rates for the use of the village or other things that go on there. And like, are they, I guess my question is, like, are they maximizing the value of that village? And because they seem to be a lot busier, but I know that they're also very, very inexpensive to rent, and I'm wondering if there's any dialogue that goes on, or?
Remember, actually, we stay out of the business. We have a council rep appointed, and they are basically holders of the land. It's our land. We have an agreement with them, but it's their business to run. We support in auto requests, not auto requests, occasional requests for support on the operations side, but we don't interject ourselves on the operational viability or rates at this time.
Just further to the Historical Village, so the $30,000 grant, that's inclusive of the 23,000, or it's in addition to the 23? It's inclusive? And do you know how much, sort of what the $30,000, what percentage of their operating revenue that is? Don't know. Okay, just curious. Same question, kind of.
Yeah, we do get a general business plan from them as part of the lease, so we can provide an idea of that.
Yeah, and they quite often, they come in and do a presentation typically. I can't remember the last time Hannah was here, but sometime this last year.
Yeah, and just thoughts, and not voicing any opposition to this at this point or anything, but as we go back and look at some of the previous slides, when we talk about, you know, that cost to the taxpayer, as we start looking at 15, 20,000 here, there, that's where some of it goes, and we have to realize that. And it's just a kind of a generalized feeling that I wanted to express. And then specific, I think we should force ourselves to do a public art policy. And one of the things that concerns me most is what happens when some of it wears out. That, you know, if we've helped with the funding of it initially, you know, what happens? Because that's when it becomes emotional in the community, that something is needing replacement, and then who's doing what? Those are, as we do, and that's not for the budget discussion, that's for the public art policy. Thank you.
We'll move on to the arena. So the arena does see the Red Deer County contribution of just over $187,000. Their contracted services, they do have to pay for their security costs, the ice painting, board cleaning. They do have one operating project for sprinkler maintenance of $18,000, as well as an identified transfer to reserve in $100,000. Red Deer County also sees a Red Deer County contribution of $187,000. They are identical for both the arena and the aquatic center. The aquatic center does also see a $100,000 transfer to reserve. This is fairly new. 2 years ago, it was 0. Last year, it was 50. So this year, we are bringing it up to 100. That is the same as the arena as well. And they do have some contracted services, some instructor costs as well that they do pay out of there. So cultural programs and facilities, so all the rentals and leases come out of this department. So for example, like the Kemp House, the Henday Association, LLC, any meeting room rentals, our curling rink lease, and as well as the senior center lease. Expenses for the LLC fall under this budget, so the utilities and security. We have a transfer to the curling rink reserve in the amount of $10,000 in this department. One big thing that we did do is we reallocated all building and repair costs to this department, and we did that so that the facility manager can maintain and manage all of the building repairs and maintenance in one department. And the HIPPO, which is our building maintenance software, has been moved to the admin budget out of this department. So library did not change. It's sitting at $156,000 for their requisition, as well as Parkland Regional Library is at $71,000. We just did a list of all the operating projects here so that everyone can see that kind of nice.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. Through to Director Vickers. What is the air photo?
So when you go into our GIS system, and then you can see the map, like the aerial photography of the town, like what you see in Google Maps when you turn on the sort of the satellite view. So we typically have one done every 3 years to update the GIS system. Yeah.
That's my bones.
Can you adjust her over there, please?
I was going to wait, but about 3 pages back, just a question. The county to the arena and aquatic, is that our choice how we split that, or did they specify they wanted them to be equal?
So in the contract, there is identified areas of where their money is earmarked for, and we put the balance, like there is, so they pay so much for the library, so much for the ball diamond, so much for this, and then the balance that's left over, we split between the.
So we made that choice.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question too, just because I was trying to do the math around the county contribution as well? The library, the $156,000, can you, I'm sorry, I know that you spoke to this, can you tell me what that's inclusive of?
So that is the requisition that we pay directly to the library. It's $155,975 or something like that.
Okay.
So that is the requisition we pay directly to them.
Okay, and so, okay, that's perfect, thanks. So we don't capture, in this budget, we don't capture the in-kind value of them being in the LLC, I should say? No, okay.
So there is a few unfunded budget considerations. So a couple of these items actually were requests from,
Sorry, I was just looking at the photo.
oh,
Is that our new town hall?
I know, I was told that it should have been the town office and, you know, but. So there's a few unfunded budget considerations. So the regional elected officials gathering, a type of reconciliation program for the town. STARS did come and request some type of requisition, either $1 or $2 per capita, which would be, you know, around that $79.85 to $15,970, as well as the Watershed Alliance requisition also came in and did a request at 50 cents per capita, which would be just under that $4,000 mark.
Can we talk about a couple of these, Director Vickers? So I think that gathering, I'm guessing, would be maybe around $1,000.
Okay.
You know, maybe 40 people, 45-ish, maybe a little bit more. The reconciliation program, can we maybe chat about that a little bit? So of course, we've ordered the Treaty 7 and Métis flag. Juanita's been looking into having a proper ceremony for that. Spoke with Mayor Hanson at Sylvan Lake because they did one. It was $15,000 to have them come and do that properly. They actually had more than one set of flags so they didn't have to come back again and do another ceremony. I think, Juanita, I think it was 3,000, kind of an initial estimate that you got, but that didn't include the gifts like the blankets that are $500 a piece, et cetera. So it's, there is a cost to doing that, just so everybody's aware.
Did you want to talk more now, or do we can come back later? Okay. So some areas that are increased in the budget, just to kind of, when we talk about the increases, so we are seeing 252,000 increases for our CMP, $45,000 in increased electricity charges. Property insurance is seeing a $20,000 increase. A new staff at 110,000. So that is total cost, not just salary. So that's salary, benefits, any costs that we need to have for a new staff. COLA costs in this budget are $217,000. We do have a transfer to the capital budget at 1.5 million. Again, that is linked specifically to a capital project. So if the capital project does not get approved, then this can go away, as well as debt payments of $742,000 in the budget.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep, so the electricity charges, I thought we had negotiated through AM. You know, everything I heard was it was an amazing, so what is that?
Yeah, so it is still an increase to what we're paying now though, right? So it starts January 1st, and it is still like 5.09 or 5.9 or something like that. It is still an increase to what we're paying now, so we are still seeing an increase.
That's the 5 cents a kilowatt hour, is that?
Yeah.
Because
We're paying 4 now.
most of us are going to be faced with 12 and higher.
Actually, it's forecast in March to just kind of go like this going forward. So you look at the forward contracts are back in that 6-7
But
range.
our 5 is through till 20,
I believe it's to 2030.
Yeah,
Because it's a
way out
6-year
there.
contract, yeah.
okay. And I know we budgeted for carbon tax. Where are we at with the fact that the province isn't charging us fuel tax and hasn't for the better part of a year or more? Are we budgeting in case that comes back, or?
So Councillor Bates, we have not identified the increase in fuel costs based on that tax coming back in January. Likely it will be. We did incorporate some increase in fuel costs in a few of the departments to kind of offset some of those increased costs, not specifically for that tax though.
Okay, thank you.
Director Vickers, the property insurance, is that through RMA?
That's through AUMA. Yeah.
AUMA. Are we able to, would it be wise to look at a quote from others? Or not?
We can attempt to look. The insurance that we need is a pretty specialized insurance, and it's not just anyone that can do it. We would have to, like, our insurance is actually underwritten by multiple different insurance companies,
Yeah.
depending on the type of insurance we
just
have.
scuttlebutt out there that I hear, and you probably know way better than I do, but I hear that RMA is a really good provider. A lot of people seem to gravitate towards that, but
That could be something that we look into.
just look at. Yeah.
It can't happen next year, like we've already actually applied for the insurance for next year.
Okay.
We would have to do this something over the summer, and then have it for like January 1st of '25 almost.
Okay, thank you.
Could we have, that 20,000, what is that as a percentage? It's not much, is it?
No, it's about a 5% or 6% increase.
Because everything I'm hearing again, it's, I know our commission, the Water Commission, it's big. Does this include cyber?
Yeah, we do pay for some cyber
And-
insurance, yes.
My understanding is a lot of facilities and are unable to get cyber insurance anymore because of the risk.
Well, and it depends on what type of securities we have in place. Like, we back up every night. We have a lot of safeguards in place with our servers and with our security to help offset those costs too, though. So, like, if anything ever happened, we would only lose one day of his
Well, I think
data.
like the mayor said, we should look, but this sounds, we're committed to it anyway. It sounds small compared to what that I'm hearing in the world.
Just one question relative, or comment, I guess, question relative to COLA. And especially given that we're working in an environment now where we're doing a 5-year forecast. Is there any, have we considered doing a 5-year average on our cost of living increase? I realize that in times of high inflation, as we've had for the last couple of years, COLA has become more of a pressing issue for us. But I wonder about, from a policy perspective, as we move forward, looking at different sources for calculations, and also doing a 5-year average on the COLA, so it's not such a significant hit. I mean, the reality is, even though the cost of living will drop at some point in time, the prices will not. So anyways, that would just be a proposal for a potential future policy for us. Thanks.
And I would like for us to focus more on Alberta as opposed to Canada, because I know this morning the numbers came out, we're sitting at 2.1 compared to nationally is 3.1 or something, or 2.2 in Alberta. So, you know, it's because of
Yeah.
gas tax relief and that kind of thing here, so.
This is another sheet that came from that survey, and 63% of residents, not that they want tax increases, but they are okay with tax increases to either maintain services at current levels or even to expand services. So the next section is to talk about salaries. So some of the stuff that we're talking about does come from other municipalities that likely is not meant to be open public yet. So did you want to go in camera now to talk about that, or did you want to take a break? We can go through all the pages again, and then we can do in camera later.
give her 30 seconds to get it all.
Has anybody been monitoring online?
Oh, we'd have to ask Ken. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're not live streaming.
Yeah, it is recording and it will be posted like tomorrow or tonight, or I'm not sure when Ken posts it, but.
Throw a little zinger in there, just to see if anybody's, we're contemplating a 10% increase.
Your life must be too calm over
Is that-
there if they're willing to play with that.
That's what we're supposed to say? Todd's saying a what, 11% increase? Is that what he said?
I think I had an idea for a mural on the building side.
Are we good to go, or everyone ready to start? Okay, so we'll kind of just go into each tab now. So general government, and we'll just kind of I'll only put up the tabs or the slides that are referencing the sheet that we're on right now. So general government is the first tab that we'll have a look at. So this is kind of where all of our taxes kind of come from. Again, we are looking at a 4.11% tax increase. 2% of that is to go to debt, and 2.11% is to go to pay for the increases in the budget that we are seeing.
So Director Vickers?
Yes.
So really what we're looking at, like, what is that dollar amount? We need another,
Let me just pull up.
Not quite. 94.
So are you wanting to talk about the total tax increased value or the tax increase that we need for the budget? Because there is a portion of the tax increase that is for debt, for that debt payment.
I want to know how much, what is the dollar value we need to meet what we want to do for next year based on what you've shown us already?
Okay, so the increase in taxes that we're receiving in total is $685,084.
685,084?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so is part of that, is that just tax increase that we're estimating, or that's also the assessment increase as
No,
well?
so a portion of that, so $310,000 is from assessment increase.
Okay. And the,
Is that the predominant reason that 1% tax now gives us $95,000 versus last year we were,
Yeah,
86 or something?
we're just up higher now that like our total property tax revenue is 9.4 million, so when you just do 1% of that, it's $94,000.
so it's a combination of assessment and new
Correct.
stuff?
Yes, yes it is,
Thank you.
yes.
So then the 310 is the assessment and the balance is the tax.
That is the tax increase. So the tax increase portion is 374,000, obviously in some change. And of that, 189,000 is going directly to that transfer to reserve. The increase to transfer to reserve is $189,433. Well, just the increase in transfer to reserve. So the total transfer to reserve for this department is $399,708. And that is going directly into the facility reserve to help build that debt payment for that aquatic center payment. Yes, it is based on a $10 million repayment. So if that is not what it ends up being at the end of the day, we will have to come back and build this up a little bit more.
So refresh my memory again, how much longer is our IDP valid?
2 more years.
Thank you.
So in this, we did have ATCO gas. It did go down considerably, so it's all based on the franchise fee estimated tariff, and then that's what our percentage is based on.
So Director Vickers, can you explain that? Like, what is the tariff fee? Is that something that ATCO is applying and they've decided to lower it, or?
Yes, so ATCO Gas is, so they have their delivery tariff, that's all the revenue that they make here in town. And then we get just that percentage base, we're at 27%. So they have to estimate their tariff for the year. And it was so low that we reached out to them to actually have them confirm that, because it was kind of a shock to us to see this decrease. And they did say that, I'll see what I can find, right?
So
But-
based on warmer weather, less
Yeah, so
gas
they say
usage?
it's gonna be an abnormally warmer winter this year, and people will be using less gas.
So far they are right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are based on that. As soon as they know any update, they will provide it to us right away, but we do have to use the numbers that they are estimating. And it is a decrease of, almost $110,000 is what the decrease is.
And a 1% increase in that, do we know what that is?
The 1% tax increase for ATCO Gas is very minimal. Let me just. So it's $25,000.
25? Yeah, okay.
So even if we increased entirely up to that 30%, we're still not meeting the revenue that we would have received last year. Yeah, so even at 30%, we would only be at 687,000, and the budget that we had last year was 697, so, yeah. Fortis, we did see an increase to Fortis, however. It is looking at 1.757 million, up from 1.656. So that's a 6.11% increase. At this time, we're not looking to increase either one of the franchise fees at this point. Yeah. Is there any other questions or?
I was like, you're gonna say something.
I can make a statement. My statement would be, all along, that I feel it's dangerous to become dependent on those. These are the kinds of bumps in the road that I think, why? And then, as I look at particularly Fortis, if we were to need, want, and propose, it's totally counter to the other level of government that's trying to promote electricity. And so I think the less we can be involved and rely on our utilities, these two utilities, the better. That's just how I think. I don't know, maybe we should start lobbying for that. That
Churches are no longer exempt.
schools, whatever, government, well, no, I mean, that's a sad reality. I mean, we exempted the ski hill and ITT last year, and, you know, I don't know who watches that to make sure they stay.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of bigger facilities like a school or a hospital, or, I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars of asset value
Yeah,
that
well, maybe we
are
should start
paying
lobbying as a,
nothing.
you know, and say if upper levels of government are gonna download to us, then we need to start taxing upper levels of government's facilities. I don't know.
I think there's also a county argument on exempt properties, so they're not subject to our exemption. We're supporting whatever, 30, 40, 50% of all 4,000, you know, residents in our caption area. They're not paying that part of our burden, I guess you could say. There's an economic benefit, of course, to have these properties in our community, but we're paying for those.
Yeah, we have one building that is still subject to that, and they only pay at 50%. So the total tax bill is, I think, $2,000, and so we only receive, I think, $977, or I think, for that, right? So And again, that's just something they just chose, that they're only gonna pay at 50%, and there's nothing we can do about that, right? Okay, is there any other questions around property taxes for now? We'll come back and circle around later. Okay, so we'll go into the council budget. So registration fees, that is still, we did identify Alberta Muni, FCM. We did identify some municipal leaders caucuses as well as the professional development. So did you guys want to see that change? Do you want us to not include the FCM right now? Do you want us to change what the professional development looks like?
I'd like us to have a discussion about it, and, you know, I don't know what it, just throwing ideas out there and seeing what other municipalities do, and.
And one item this year is AUMA is in Red Deer this year. So we did not change the hotel and travel accommodations cost in the budget this year. However, the question is out there is, do you want to stay in hotels in Red Deer, or can we take that out? One thought is that we take out the hotels for the AUMA cost, and because FCM is in Calgary this year, maybe more of you want to attend that, and we can just transfer that cost to that project, or have that conversation to increase that professional development as well.
Yeah, or maybe it's an opportunity to save some money, and then, you know, I don't know. Personally, I would like to see, I think, FCM out, but increase the budget. So anybody, if somebody wants to go to FCM every year, please go, as opposed to maybe somebody else doesn't want to go, and I think that's a reality.
Okay. So what kind of number would be
I
an
don't know,
appropriate?
what are we at, 2,000 for
2,000
everybody?
right now. And if that has to cover hotel cost as well, I mean, that's what FCM costs, right?
Well,
If you're
Toronto
talking-
was probably a little bit
That really
different.
That skewed it
right?
really bad,
Skewed it,
really
yeah,
bad.
Really bad, yeah. So, Councillor Maceras?
Thank you, Engineer Barclay. When I brought my proposal to council about serving on FCM, I had brought a budget with that, which was about $15,000, an estimate, which is not going to be used because I've not attended 2 of 3 of the functions. But I'm just wondering, where is that accounted for?
The professional development, sorry?
My particular service on FCM.
So that is not in here anywhere like that. It would just be covered under your salary costs. So in the council honorarium, that would be where that falls under.
Okay.
Councillor Wing?
Thank you. So this is just not entirely relevant for this year, but because of the location of Alberta Munis and FCM. But it's a concern, and it's something I think that I think it's important that we have a conversation even at the Alberta municipalities level, is around registration and reservation timelines relative especially to election time. So council or the town would be registering and reserving rooms for people that haven't been elected yet, who may then not be able to attend, who the cost then for those both reservations and registration are lost because of deadlines. And it's actually become an issue in a central Alberta community, a horrible issue actually. And so it's just something I think just to be aware of as we move forward, is to think about, I mean, maybe, yeah, it's nice to save the money on the early bird, but if in the end you're registering people who aren't able to attend, then it's not saving you any money at all. So just for future, doesn't happen this year, but I wanted to get it out there for us as we move forward. And if there's a conversation with Alberta Munis around that whole early registration piece, it might be helpful. Thanks.
I'm just going to throw another thought into the mix. AM changed in the sense that it used to be just the fall, and then they had a mayor's caucus in the spring, and that has evolved into a spring. And so I guess I'm throwing it out there too, that maybe it shouldn't be whatever we decide. Maybe it should be a hybrid, that one of them is, you know, expected and the other is additional, or, and I think we're all gonna see, as some of these municipalities are under a lot of pressure, that they're gonna withdraw some of this a little bit. And from my previous attendance at FCM, which I haven't been now for a couple of 3 years, but Alberta, for whatever reason, is a huge attendee compared to all the other provinces. And maybe because we're so wealthy. But I've always found that organization to be, it's wealthy, and they have a huge budget. And so I'm a little bit cautious about how much I feed that, and that's just a feeling I have. I think they can do some great things, but I look at their ability to not get the back pay for the RCMP and a few things like that as things that didn't happen. And so all of these things should be approached, I think, with show me that you're still doing great things and worthy of our budgets. But I kind of started with the AM. It has morphed to twice a year, which I think we should look at.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. As far as FCM goes for me, I've not had an opportunity to go, and to be very honest, last year when we were deciding if my name had been drawn, I was going to withdraw it. I personally look at it that I would way more attend something that's relative to my board appointments or the appointments that I've got here. I have not done a lot of research on FCM. I know only mainly about it from when we attend AB Munis and the reports back that we get. So for me, I'd rather see FCM taken out and our professional development be increased so we can really focus on where we feel our strengths are. And for me, just to go to a convention to get some experience just does not work for me. I'd way rather have professional development specific to what the roles that I'm in.
Yeah, I personally totally agree with that, and I don't know, Director Vickers, if you can kind of have an idea what FCM is and pull that out and then adjust the professional development budget accordingly. And I mean, we maybe haven't even, you know, you look at things and, oh yeah, I'd like to go, but oh no, don't have budget for that or whatever, but so.
So with that is, what we can do is take the budget allocation, EMA, FCM, and the other PD associated budget, and come back to you, and maybe we have a slide just specifically to those details, and then you can say, we need to up it another 5,000, 10,000, or maintain that number.
Yeah, like put the Alberta Munis Fall Convention in there. I think everybody should go. Election year, of course, it's held in November, as opposed to earlier, but always have that in there, because I think that's so important for council to attend. And but the rest, I think, is kind of open for what fits people's times and stuff. So, and I think we have a representative at FCM right now, so I think we'll be getting a lot, well, if you can ever go, yeah, because we're have you sitting here instead of being there. But I think we'll get a lot more information about FCM as well moving forward, which is good.
What about this year for FCM and all of us in
All
Calgary?
right, I think we're pulling it out, and if people want to go, then we'll look at it. I shouldn't say we're pulling it out, but let's look at that, and if people want to go to FCM in Calgary, by all means go.
So what I'm hearing is AUMA stay in as a standard, and
Yeah.
everything else comes out and becomes part of that PD kind of program. So the PD initially was $14,000. That's $2,000 per each. So I am looking at an additional $20,500 that's in the budget regarding FCM and other registrations that we can incorporate into that PD plan. And again, tomorrow or maybe Thursday, we can show you a slide of what that looks like, and then you can decide if you want to see that increased for this year, or maybe it's good for this year and increased in a future year.
I've got another question. What do other municipalities do in terms of PD amounts for the mayor compared to councillors? Because we're doing here is like 2,000 for everybody, isn't it?
Yes.
That doesn't seem exactly appropriate.
Appropriate in what way? Like, you think it should be more?
More for the mayor.
More for the mayor? Traditionally, the mayor. You do see a lot of other municipalities that the mayor does have an increased amount. We did want it to be kind of the same, right, just for equality, but we can make the numbers whatever you guys would prefer. Because it is for conferences as well, not just like training courses or anything like that, but it is intended for learning and for training and for getting better, and everyone should have that same opportunity, right? But we'll come back with the numbers, and if you guys would like it to be increased or decreased, we can talk about that then.
Can you do a little bit of a, if you have time or somebody else could do it for you, a little bit of a survey like throughout maybe central Alberta, and maybe find out what others are doing to give us an idea, because I don't know what everybody does, but.
Do you know anything about what others do?
I know Sylvan Lake, but yeah.
Yeah, we can ask around to
Yeah.
a few places for sure.
And I know that many have pulled FCM out, and they allocating budget then instead of for.
And this year, I also did hear to pull out the hotel costs for AUMA just because it's in Red Deer, is that correct?
And the Alberta Munis is only the fall conference?
Yes.
Anything other than that will be coming out of our personal development?
Yeah, so the fall conference as well as all the travel costs would be associated, would be
Yeah.
covered
Yeah,
already.
just one meeting a year, though? Yep,
Yeah.
perfect.
I'd like to chip in one more thing here. I know there's a CAO component to both those organizations, and just because we've had this discussion, I think the CAO shouldn't feel compelled in any way, shape, or form to change whatever he's, because I know they have those sessions at FCM and AM, and wouldn't want him to feel pushed by this discussion. Thank you.
Pardon me? Yeah, Don's budget is different. Okay, are we good on the registration fee side for now? Okay. So the other big one out of this budget is that advertising and promotions section. And we will go through, and I can identify what everything comes out of there. So the fireworks, that is a cost of $7,500 that comes out of this budget. The parade costs, statistically in the past couple of years, we spent around that $1,500 mark. So that's all the candy that we purchase for it, any decorations for the parade float itself. The sponsorships, so we do have a identified amount of $5,000 for sponsorships, so that's things like the rodeo sponsorship, any of the whole sponsors for golf tournaments that come in. So we did keep the doctors, so there is a $2,000 for those doctors' welcome baskets that is in this budget. The staff Christmas party is funded out of this budget. Miscellaneous event tickets, so this is things like if council's buying a table at the friendship dinner, I think happened, and things like that. This kind of gives that option for here. We do identify certain things like business cards and small little purchases like that if council does need to do that. The birthdays and anniversaries, so if someone has that 100th birthday or that 60th anniversary, any costs if there's, flowers or some kind of cost, that can come out of here. The scholarships, $2,500 for the scholarships comes out of this budget. And any miscellaneous event costs we also put out of here. So if council's doing something and they need to order coffee and donuts for some meeting that's happening, that kind of comes out of here as well.
So I'm curious why this comes out of council's budget, like why Canada Day and parades and
Well, I don't know. It just always, it always has.
Just because we've always done it that way.
The fireworks were kind of like, that council pays for the fireworks for the town, and it's kind of, I don't know. We can reallocate this budget if you would prefer it not to be here.
Well,
But
I
that
mean,
doesn't mean you get more money. You
No, I
just
mean,
take
I
away
know,
the-
I realize that, like left pocket, right pocket, but it's just kind
Yeah.
of odd that this is a council budget and
Yeah, the
it's,
Christmas party was always, council's Christmas party for the staff.
Okay.
The event costs, those are council events, right? Like if you're having a mayor's meeting or something like that and you wanted to buy lunch for that, that kind of can come out of here,
Okay.
right?
okay. Okay, one thing I would like us to get, I'll put my order in now, but some official, very nice looking cards to write thank you
Thank you
notes
cards,
in.
yes. Stationery.
Stationery, linen,
me.
like a white linen, see, I already have it designed, but something kind of classy looking and, because we don't have anything, like I'm actually purchasing local art
Okay.
cards and just so it has Town of Innisfil logo on it
Yep.
or something. You guys can design it, can look after that, but.
So just a comment, and I haven't, had a full night's sleep since the last parade because somebody yelled at me so loud about throwing candy. It's actually in contravention of the road, or of the parade policy, so can we reconsider or talk about, as we get closer to the parade, how we can, more of us, get out on the road and hand out candy as opposed to throwing it from the wagon, because we shouldn't be doing that.
Councilor Wing, I have similar anxiety with parade, but I think the idea will come back and have administrative conversation is to apply candy throwing, however, with the restriction, or there is a requirement to have that security support of a float that wishes to throw candy. I haven't talked to the staff yet, but how do we tighten that up? I was thinking about that as we're going through budget, but I think we can still fulfill the fun, but however, there's should be a little bit of guidance on the floats on that expectation.
Well, you'll be happy this year. We've, well, maybe CEO Becker doesn't know this, but we were talking the other day, we're going to have a Yucco Flutz wagon. So,
Yeah, I'll comment.
Todd's like, oh,
Yeah.
he's from Saskatchewan, he knows what Yucca Flux is. Yeah, it's like you put fruit in it and let it sit.
Yeah. So deliciousness.
Yeah. Let it sit.
Everybody brings a bottle, fill it up, and put a bunch of fruit in it.
I've lost him now.
You know they're not
I said
in
I've
camera
lost him.
anymore, right?
Okay.
One thing, and I think I brought this up before, is around sponsorships. I would like for us to explore the idea that within our sponsorships is, it can't be a for-profit. I personally have a real issue sponsoring events where those organizations are making a profit from it. There's a lot of organizations out there, and I'll name some of the ones that I'm part of, that we as board members, committee members, do not take anything. It's all on volunteer, and yet I know through the CSSC, we've had applications for paying people, like for, part of the grant application was for a person to get some remuneration for what they were doing. And I personally don't agree with that. I don't want to name any of the ones that we've sponsored before, but I truly have an issue with an organization that's coming for sponsorships from the town, et cetera. I can get it from big business, things like that, corporate, but from coming to the town, I would like to see something, if other people are, at least explore that we don't sponsor for-profit organizations. Yeah, I can't, I don't want to name any unless we were in camera, so, thank you.
I would like to voice some agreement with that, and I'm sure we'll be back in camera before we're all done here this week. But just because we've done something before, I don't think we always do it again.
well, can we move in camera now and have that discussion?
Absolutely. We just need to wait and make sure Ken
Okay,
is good.